Parents of adults with intellectual disabilities address a government panel. Thunder Bay Police search for clues in hit and run. And a proposed wind farm in Shunya gets new life. And thank you for joining us. Well, the Select Committee on Developmental Services heard some troubling stories today from Northwestern Ontario families and caregivers. The testimonials show the current system is not serving those in need. The Thunder Bay hearing was part of a provincial tour that will lead to a strategy for people living with intellectual disabilities. Jonathan Wilson reports.
The families are burnt out. We have systems that are broken.
Deborah Johnson is the chair of the Thunder Bay Family Network. Her 32-year-old son has lost 30 pounds while on a 4-year waiting list to have all of his teeth replaced from what she claims is insufficient dental care in his hospital setting. She believes solutions lie in creating lifelong support networks and is advocating for families to make choices with the funding they receive.
Individualized funding is something you hear on a constant basis, which provides accountability. If I knew what his individualized funding allotment was, I would make sure those dollars would be spent appropriately to Lindsay's care.
Sandy Boyce spoke to the committee off the cuff, arguing caregivers for those living with physical and intellectual disabilities need better information about how to access programs and funding. So far, doctors have been unable to diagnose her 25-year-old son so he can receive the specialized care he needs.
He's very high functioning in different areas. He can tell you all the stats on hockey and baseball and the Blue Jays or Toronto Maple Leafs, whatever. And but other areas he doesn't comprehend the same way as we do. But to obtain funding, you need a label. And so he doesn't have a proper diagnosis. We know this, but to get funding, you need a label.
In 2012, Ontario's healthcare system spent under $4,000 per person, about $600 less than the Canadian average. Those appearing before the committee consistently connected a lack of funding with the services they say local intellectually disabled people need. The Select Committee will deliver its final report by May the 15th. Jonathan Wilson, TBT News.
Thunder Bay Police are looking for witnesses to what they call a serious hit-and-run crash. The collision happened around 3 o'clock Sunday morning at the intersection of Memorial and the Harbour Expressway. Police say this car was stopped for a red light when it was struck from behind by a fast-moving black Dodge pickup truck. There was a passenger in the back seat of the car at the time of the collision. However, no serious injuries have been reported. The driver of the truck allegedly drove away, and police found the vehicle a short time later at a nearby home. Police are now asking the public for any information about the crash or the driver involved. Provincial police in Dryden say 2 young boys are safe after allegedly being abducted in Alberta. The OPP say they received a report from Edmonton police that a father had allegedly kidnapped his sons, aged 3 and 4, and was headed to Toronto. Officers pulled over a car late yesterday afternoon and arrested a 29-year-old man from Toronto. He was to appear in Dryden court today, charged with 2 counts of child abduction, 2 of kidnapping, and uttering threats. Police say both boys were recovered unharmed. And a garage fire on the city's north side caused significant damage early this morning. It broke out on North Empress Avenue near the Red River Road intersection just before 5 o'clock. It destroyed a large 2-car garage, but fire crews managed to get the 2 vehicles out with minimal damage to them. There were no injuries, and the cause remains under investigation. Ontario's minimum wage has been frozen for 3 years, and anti-poverty activists across the province are turning up the heat and demanding an increase. The Lakehead University Student Union hosted a panel discussion on the subject last night. John Thompson was there.
The minimum wage panel's keynote speaker was Kaylee Teason, an economist with the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. She says raising the minimum wage from $10.25 to $14 an hour would cause the standard of living of 464,000 Ontarians who are living 20% below the poverty line to rise to living 10% above it. She argues a higher wage floor would take the quality of jobs in Canada up to the next level.
Our economy has had a slow and tepid recovery since the recession, and people are worried, and they're worried about their jobs. What we need to be worried about is the quality of jobs that we're creating in Ontario. Raising the minimum wage can help make sure that more jobs are good jobs.
Alison Jackson says poverty is one of the most defining social determinants of health, yet 50% of Aboriginal children in Ontario are living in poverty today. The Ontario Native Women's Association's Aboriginal Health Policy Analyst sees poverty impacting everything from education to a cultural ability to contribute to one's community. While she supports raising the minimum wage, she says effectively impacting Ontario's most severe poverty requires a cultural lens.
The situation for the social determinants of health across the board for Aboriginal people is much more severe. The depth of poverty is more severe, and some of the reasons and the issues and challenges that Aboriginal communities and Aboriginal people experience are very different from that of the mainstream population. So in order to address those challenges, an Aboriginal perspective is needed.
Event sponsor Poverty Free Thunder Bay is part of a province-wide campaign called the $5 billion Boost, a calculation that raising the wages of 1 million Ontario workers to $14 an hour would mean a $5.1 billion increase to the province's economy. The Ontario Minimum Wage Advisory Panel conducted consultations in Thunder Bay last fall, and it will make its final recommendations in the coming weeks. John Thompson, TBT News.
Survivors from the St. Anne's Residential School in Fort Albany have received some vindicating news. The Superior Court ruled the Canadian government must release thousands of documents in relation to all that took place at the school. Some of the alleged acts include electrocution of children and different forms of sexual abuse. Lawyer Julian Faulkner is the counsel for the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and they want access to the documents to provide an accurate documentation of Canadian history.
At its heart, there was an apology by the Prime Minister on behalf of Canada to First Nations people for, what is a blight on our history. If that apology is to have any credibility, then this kind of gamesmanship has to stop. And what has to happen is that a full and meaningful interpretation be given to Canada's obligations by Canada so that we don't have to routinely and repeatedly drag them to court.
Faulkner states that the documents are very important in getting the survivors adequate compensation for the abuse they endured at the St. Anne's School. The Anishinaabe Nation is also applauding the ruling, saying the truth about the school will be fully revealed. The Ontario government is moving ahead with 2 by-elections. They were issued today for the by-elections in Niagara Falls and the Toronto riding of Thornhill. The Niagara Falls seat was vacated when Liberal Kim Crater resigned last fall, and the Thornhill seat was left empty after Tory Peter Sherman resigned in December. Voting day will be February 13th. Sources had said Premier Kathleen Wynne had wanted both by-elections over before the legislature resumes sitting on the 18th of that month. A wind farm project in the Shunya area is seeing new life. The Lakehead Wind Park has been under development since 2004. Now, one of the world's largest energy producers wants to see it move ahead. GDF Suez presented the 100-megawatt project to council in Shunya this week. The company is looking to erect between 30 and 60 turbines northwest of Mackenzie. Only 5 to 10 of the turbines would be located on municipally owned property. That could provide Shunya with lease revenue between $26,000 and $290,000 each year. The remaining turbines would be located on private property.
The project is set quite far back from local residences, so over 1.5 kilometers from the nearest residence, which we think is a benefit, as well as just a strong wind regime, and there's a 230 kV line that goes straight through the project site.
One of the major hurdles for the project is a recent declaration by the Ontario Power Authority. The OPA says there is no capacity on the grid in northwestern Ontario. But GDF Suez says the plan to have turbines installed between now and 2019, and by that time, they believe they could hook on to the new east-west tie line being built. Officials with the Thunder Bay International Airport announced a big change to their parking system today. The airport will be adding long-term premium parking to their lots in an effort to cater to the ever-changing trends with travelers. Beginning on the 31st, the short-term parking lot will extend its hours of availability from a 3-hour maximum to a limitless time frame with a daily maximum charge of $20. The change comes because the demand for long-term parking is always increasing, but the short-term demand has virtually stayed the same over recent years.
No physical changes to the parking lot, but basically what we're offering is what we're calling a premium parking product, which will allow overnight and extended stay parking in the short-term lot.
McFadden adds the addition of premium parking will not affect short-term parkers, as there will still be adequate space and a contingency plan if it does somehow overfill. Well, many people have heard of making blood or plasma donations, but there's another gift of life being sought these days, a bone marrow donation. Canadian Blood Services has identified a need to increase their donor pool, and the new procedure called One Match is a lot less invasive than before. TBT's Phil Darlington was one of the people who got the swab today.
The annual Get Swabbed program is underway across Canada. It's a program that the Canadian Blood Services has in place to increase its donor base for bone marrow. LU was the only location in Thunder Bay where people can drop in to register, and it's the students that make for a good donor pool.
We are looking at those young, 17 to 35, and predominantly male and ethnically diverse whenever possible.
The need in Canada for marrow donors is great. Organizers say that there are about 800,000 people in need, but there's only about 350,000 people on the registry.
Leukemia, blood cancers, anybody who has even like a solid mass tumor, they could be seeking one. Anybody who's gone through rigorous chemotherapy where their blood cells are completely exhausted.
I actually have a friend whose cousin needed bone marrow, so she had posted it on Facebook, and they had a Facebook page, so I looked it up, kind of informed myself, and decided that it'd be a good idea.
Muladu says in the 4 years the program has been run, they see between 8,000 and 10,000 students register per year through the universities. The reason, he says, is because of the way the donating procedure is done.
More common procedure to donate stem cell nowadays is through what we call stimulated peripheral blood stem cell donation, which is similar to blood donation.
The process is actually very easy. After you finish filling out your little pamphlet with all the information, you get a kit that looks like this, and it comes with 4 of these. Now all you have to do is swab the upper right, upper left, and lower left part of your mouth, and then just pop it in the kit, just like this. This takes about 20 seconds. Phil Darlington, TBT News.
To a heartfelt gesture in the halls of St. Patrick High School today, a special needs student was asked out on a date to the school's upcoming semi-formal. School Council President Abby Arnold met John Legal in a grade 10 production of Grease when they had to dance together in the play. Today, Arnold showed her classmates that Legal's developmental disorder means nothing, as she painted his name in a display case and surprised him by getting down on one knee and asking him to come with her to their semi-formal.
I was nervous because I've never had to ask anyone out or do anything kind of like extraordinary like this. But it was like such an amazing experience that I got to, get down on one knee and be accepted. And it was just really fun. Like, I'm so excited for semi.
Arnold hopes that her actions will bring about a change in attitudes at her school and show others it's okay to step outside of your boundaries.